All right. So I am currently between Midnight Chains and Bone Hunters. Don't know if I'm going to go to Bone Hunters next and keep going, or if I'm going to go to Night of Knives. It really could go either way. Right now I want to get through the Way of Adan. But then after that, it's going to be all systems go again for Malazan. Now I'll get through Way of Adan quite quickly. I've been thinking, though, I'm 5 books in, which I can't believe, and I want to rank and kind of re-examine each of these prologues and epilogues, and kind of give my ranking for that. Now, I've kind of peeked through them a little bit, remembering some of the scenes, remembering some of the highlights and things. And man, there was a lot that I forgot. And these are amazing, amazing prologues and epilogues. Now, I will just go through them one by one, starting with Gardens of the Moon. And then maybe rank them after that. I have some notes here, so I'll be looking at that a little bit, just to kind of remind me the things, so I'm not flipping through the books each time. But I just did that. I just spent the last little while doing that, this last hour. Okay, so starting with Gardens of the Moon. Now, Gardens of the Moon, I would say, has maybe the most kind of vanilla, a little bit, prologue. It does give a good sense of, it's the impact of that moment where there was this change from emperor to empress was a big moment. Now, I got stuck in that moment, clear through House of Chains, and only now am I starting to be like, okay, I'll let it go a little bit. Even though it still is a big moment, I'm realizing that there's just so many big moments. That's just one moment. That's just one moment that we can look at. But I say that I don't know if vanilla is the right way, because I did like it, but it was maybe a prologue that I can imagine seeing in a lot of maybe some other fantasy. Only compared to the other prologues that we get in these next 4 books. The next 4, there are very, very unique prologues, especially once we get to number 3. But we'll get there. I would probably say, I'm not sure, but I would probably say that this is the weakest of the prologues, just like it's probably the weakest of the books. Now, when it comes to the epilogue, there was some cool stuff that happened in the epilogue. Namely, we have Moonspawn going south. We have Quick Ben kind of wanting to give Whiskey Jack a little bit of a break. Like, we have this plan that we would like to do, or, this is the plan, but we want to give him a break because he's kind of gone through enough. But kind of the feature of the prologue is when Tattersail, or I should say Perrin, wants to go and find Tattersail once this situation with the Panion threat is gone. And so he speaks to her in his mind and is totally surprised when he gets a response. Which, very, very cool, especially considering, now that I'm thinking, we have these people in Midnight Tides. Obviously, this is going to be a spoiler thing, guys, okay? We get to Midnight Tides, and we have people praying to Mael, this Withel, and we will get to that, but holy smokes. And we get this idea of ascendants kind of getting almost like like prayers being heard and prayers being answered sort of thing in a way. So we get the idea that she's kind of on this other sort of realm now. We have Crocus, a really cool point with Crocus, where he also asks Callum if he believes in luck, which Callum scoffs at. And if you would have seen me in Gardens of the Moon, I didn't start doing Malazan stuff until I was done Deadhouse Gates, and then that's when kind of this channel started to become what it is for Malazan. But if you would have saw me in Gardens of the Moon, and I haven't really mentioned it, it was actually the stuff with this Opon, these two. That was the thing that I was most intrigued by in that book. Now, I don't know if other people are that way. I didn't so much care about the bridge burners and a lot of what was happening. I did think Darujistan was cool. I thought the assassin stuff was cool. The Fett just kind of like, it just wasn't hitting me. But I was loving the stuff with Opon, with this sword, with the coin that kept spinning. That was interesting to me. I was quite gripped by it. So when he tosses this coin in the water, I thought that is a neat way to kind of maybe say goodbye to that whole thing. And we haven't seen them since. We don't really talk about them much anymore in the other books, but I was surprised because to me it was such a big part of that first book. I thought the prologue was fun and good. I would give that kind of a mid to low tier in relation to the other prologues in the book. But I would actually, looking back, considering what we glean from that interaction with Perrin and Tattersail, I think that's a big one. I think on a reread that would hit even more. With Deadhouse Chains, now this prologue, holy smokes, this prologue didn't give tons in ways of context of the history and stuff, but what a way to set the tone with this lady, this noble lady getting, Bowden, that was his name, right? Kind of making an example of this noble lady and using the chain to do what he does there. Really sets the tone. And we get this moment with Felicin catching eyes with Tavor for just a moment. And in that moment, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure still about Tavor. I think probably a lot of people would be like, I hate this lady. But just by mentioning that Tavor would stall a little bit on Felicin obviously implies that there is some, it didn't seem, it was cold because she's in this parent house, which they're taught to be kind of that way. But it felt like there was more to the story by her doing that. It kind of reminded me of that movie with Christian Bale, Equilibrium or whatever, where they're not allowed to show emotion. And they have to be very careful about the way they kind of look too long. There's people watching all the time. There would have been people watching Tavor, and obviously she had a plan. So I think right then I was already interested in Tavor and learning more about her. So I loved it. Now, the epilogue of Deadhouse Gates was kind of weird. It had this house, did they even call her a horsewife or something? And it also had this pregnant widow, I believe. And she kind of had either a stillborn baby, that's what it sounded like. But she called it an empty vessel, which now with the empty hold kind of sounds interesting. But an empty vessel, no soul. And then suddenly all these crows come down and we can hear the sound of all this crying of this misery and stuff. And you go back and you see that Coltane was eaten by these crows. And now it is enveloped this lady, and then the spirit kind of this baby, kickstarts her or whatever. Kind of the soul goes into this empty vessel, and the baby's alive, and that must be Coltane, right? It kind of gives us that idea that maybe that's the case, and then later on we hear that Coltane has been reborn or whatever, but we still don't know much. We still don't know about his thing. Now, that one, I had to go back and understand that in retrospect. The first time through that, I thought, what the heck was that? I mean, crows keeps being part, but I wasn't as good at kind of maybe, I say kind of maybe a lot, but grabbing some repetitious kind of themes and stuff. In retrospect, kind of knowing how Steven Erikson does some things, I should have caught that. I should have caught that earlier. Now, the prologue in Memories of Ice. That's where we get our first S-tier prologue. It kicks things up a notch, and I would put this prologue up against any prologue in fantasy. I really would. Now, people would have to understand. They'd have to read up to that moment and then read the prologue probably. But even then, even on its own, it would be super compelling. But the fact that we get more about the mudflats and the Jagged, we get the Jagged mom being chased by a Talani mass, so we get more about the Talani mass. We already recognize these names. It has these two children being hunted, just kind of cold-blooded hunted, but in a way that was kind of emotionally absent. Chasing these children, drops them into this rend, and the whole time in the book, I don't know if everyone was this way, but the whole time I was thinking, where are those kids? What has happened with those kids? What is the fate of those kids? And then we finally get that at the end. She encounters it was Kalava. It was this Talan who was connected with Tool, so we get Tool's name, or maybe it just says the brother. But so cool. We get some talk about the ritual of Talan in that. We also get this amazing fall of the crippled god. So finally we get, it would have been interesting to read this series as it was coming out, because I knew the last one was called the crippled god. So obviously he means a lot. I don't know if I would have felt like he was the head guy yet if I just went in not knowing what kind of some of the things that I knew. You certainly find out by chapter 3 or something that he's one of the main antagonists. But yeah, it was so exciting to see that part and kind of glean that this was the guy. And then we get maybe my favorite part. We get these 3 elder gods, Krull, Draconis, and the Lady of Cold Nights, I believe. And they come together, and they are there to kind of confront Calor, who, wow, what an amazing entrance as well. We get these curses, their curses against his, kind of at each other. Just so cool. He's just burnt everything. And then, burnt everyone, made a throne out of it. And then it gets wiped away into this other Warren, which is a part of Krull or whatever. And then we get this beast who's been there, even looks at them and is like, even they are young compared to me, like little babies. And it is this Tog, I believe, and he is looking for his mate. So there are just so many things that are introduced and that we get payoff from that prologue. It's amazing. And then the epilogue is amazing. We get Ganos, or Perrin, going into the Finnest house and then calls raced and says he's basically moving in. He also this part was interesting. This part I only kind of gleaned coming back to it. He encounters a beggar as he's leaving the Finnest house, and the beggar says that he has all this treasure in these mountains that are just south of Darujistan. And I was thinking, isn't that the mountain range that Picker found Munnig? And that must be Munnig, right? And I didn't catch that. So it must be him. He's a cripple now, but he has this gold out there. I don't know if he's meaning that gold that he got for the Torques, or if he has all this other stuff, but very interesting. And then Perrin just basically said, nah, I'm not going to be a part of that. And you should go away because the Finnest house is not super friendly about strangers. And that's where Munnig kind of starts to cackle a little bit and says, well, I know one that is. It must be the crippled god's house, yo. So that was very cool. Now we also get one of Krull's temples has been turned into a tavern by the bridge burners, and it's not going so well. But they do get one patron come in, and it ends up being Duiker. And I just get chills thinking that we might get Duiker in the Bone Hunters. Now, I don't know even what to expect with the Bone Hunters, other than I am 99% sure that it's a euphemism. So the Bone Hunter group, Shirk has got to be one of the Bone Hunters. I mean, she is the Bone Hunter, right? And she found him, Ublala. So there's got to be more Shirks, more people with Oodaloos. 99% sure it's a euphemism. And it's going to be a big book. So I'm all here for the Bone Hunters. Anyway, and Duiker, I hope he's part of the I hope he's one of the bones found. Tool. We Kruppa got some. Yeah, 90% sure that's where it's going. But Duiker has this sad story. Saddest story. And it's so cool that the same kind of stuff that he is telling, he uses sort of the same language that Trull is going to use in the epilogue of House of Chains. So let's go to House of Chains. I don't even know what I ranked these so far, but they're just all so good. I should just say they're all so good. I know ranking is kind of a thing, but really I just do see this as one big whole. There's obviously some weak parts in the writing, maybe at the start of the series, but as a whole, it's great. So the prologue, definitely at least A tier for me. Very short. But the reason it would be so high on my list is that is the one where I always go back and think of that moment, especially as I was reading through Midnight Tides. And I know I had this thing where I was hoping we would get to the point where they would, his kin would bring him there and there would be the shorning from House of Chains. And then I didn't think we would see that, but I thought we would get a little closer to that moment. The shorning, the mark cut into his forehead, and then this really awful, sad moment where they proclaim that he never existed. He never existed. And I think of that, how many times did that happen? We hear, or we see the faces scratched out in Egypt, or names scratched out or certain names or people or concepts or whatever kind of hunted down and burned artificially. Kind of, we don't know what we don't know. And so it's interesting that they were going to do this same thing. I always have found that forgetting, kind of that collective forgetting, as a really powerful concept. So we get that here. And also, I was thinking about this today. Now, he isn't scared of drowning, Trull. I mean, that's what he kind of says. And he figures that, even though he's chained here, all of his kin are going to eventually drown. There's this single truth in the Edur people that the only fight against nature or something like that is imbalance. And their brother, assuming Rulad, has kind of set that off, and now they're all going to drown or whatever. It's obviously going to get worse and worse and worse. They have this wall to stop the drown. I'm just so excited. I hope we get more of that stuff. I thought we were going to get that in Midnight Tides. Anyway, the part that I think was interesting is he is chained. And again, I'm kind of fascinated by this water. Whenever they use water. But considering what we know of male Bug, it's almost like he's being offered to male, or offered to Bug. Like, here he is. You take him, or you save him, or you do whatever. Remember, one of the reasons he was chained there was because they were saying that he was following a hidden master. It said he had no crime, though. Like, he had no actual crime, but that was kind of a part of his sentence, or what he was being condemned of, following a hidden master. So, very interesting if they had one specific in mind, or if they're, he's a spy. But it would be very cool if that ended up being that he was following Bug. And it was almost like, I don't know, maybe being offered, and I'm sure you know what I mean. But very, very cool. Also, one of the reasons he was there was for saying that their newfound enemy were purekin, not worth being, that shouldn't be killed. Very interesting. Which I assume means the Tistandi. Maybe I should be further along, but that's what I assume that means. Okay, we get the epilogue of House of Chains, which was awesome, and is the other part that I've thought of more than anything, almost. We get them at the first throne. We get Onrak. We get Trull. We get Minala. We get these children assassins, children soldiers. We get these other Talani Mass. And we learn that Onrak's former wife, or his ex, has died now. The one that was so upset with his betrayal. And Trull, who we already love Trull up to this point, but if we didn't love him more before, we love him now, weeps for Onrak. Onrak says, kind of says to the Talani Mass that he kind of has this beautiful stuff to say about a heart being surrendered and not stolen. And then Trull just, he says, "How dare you? It's funny that you would call Onrak the broken when he is essentially the most whole among you." So amazing. So amazing. So let's get to Midnight Tides. And I have a lot to say. Now that I have sat for a day with the epilogue. Holy smokes. But first, I want to get to the prologue. The prologue was cool. The prologue got more of what we were wanting to know. It kind of had some of that feel of offering some stuff like Memories of Ice, some context of the history. We get this unified effort against the K'chain Shamal with Scavendari Bloodeye and Ruin, and the kind of the temporary alliance with the Edur and the Tist and until there's this betrayal. Sets all this stuff up. We get Gothos, which we're so excited about. We get Mail. We got Kilimandaros or whatever, and I'm really fuzzy about the details with that person. We get also the Warren of the Crippled God. We get Withel, who is tasked with making a sword. And the more I think about this connection between Withel and Bug, the more I am excited. The more I'm like, that was the perfect introduction. Who would have thought? I mean, Withel only means something because I love Bug so much. T-Hole I love, but it's because I love Bug so much. Looking back on Midnight Tides, I love that the person that is making this sword really is always praying to Bug, and it keeps having Bug falling into the water and stuff, and it's bringing up this, it's just really very cool. And it also reminds me of, again, I mentioned it with the prologue of Gardens of the Moon, this connection of worshiper and the ascendant or the elder god or that kind of connection. But we get the epilogue. We know who Mail is. We have this storm raging around this island in the crippled god's realm or warren. And we have Sandaleth, or whatever her name was. She has been bugging Withel this whole time, saying, why do you keep praying to your god? It's not doing anything. You should just give it up. Nothing is happening. Why do you keep doing that? You are a slave to the crippled god here. It's no use. Why do that? And then Withel, and it's been having this effect on Bug. I'm sure if I went back, I would see it and I would be like, that is awesome. That is awesome. I need to read this book. Withel is starting to kind of feel something. It's almost like he's getting some connection back. He's getting this feeling or this insight that he has to do something. He thinks of the Nocts, where they build a nest, they knock it down, build a nest, knock it down. And then he looks at the nest of the crippled god and charges it and basically drop kicks it. And the crippled god is just shrieking inside. Reading this on my stupid little stump in the middle of the field, I was blown away. I was cackling to myself. Well, not really cackling, but inside I was like, this is so funny. This is so silly and hilarious. He's screaming and Withel's kind of laughing. And just as that happens, as he's smiling, the boat shows up. So he got this idea as he's praying to Mail. As he gets this idea, he sees the boat. As he acts on the idea, the boat reaches the shore. Isn't that awesome? And then the guy he's praying to shows up and hooks the guy up saying, hey, I got a boat to get you out of here. And I am going to first kick the butt of this guy who has been awful to you, who he shouldn't have done that. So a guy mentioned on my one of my videos that he's like, I would pray to Mail. Bug is amazing. He turns up for his followers. Of all these ascendants, yeah, he's the one that you want showing up and sticking up for you. You know, a lot of these people that we're getting prayed to, you know, this Shandal, this lady would probably scoff about any of them. But how amazing that the god of this Withel guy shows up to help him out, and it's just in the best way. It's just in the best way. And I think on a reread, knowing that where that is going and knowing that connection will just be a game changer for me. Now, any other author would have given us that connection early on in a very explicit sort of way. And it would have been cool. It still would have been cool to see. But going back now and seeing that that was there in front of me the whole time, it's just awesome. So I am going to rank the epilogue of, I'm going to rank the prologue of Memories of Ice and the epilogue of Midnight Tides as my two favorites of this series so far. So let me just look. Yeah, prologue of Gardens of the Moon I would put at the bottom. I'm not going to do this. I just talked through all these, but yeah, the epilogue of Midnight Tides was probably my favorite, even though starting with especially Midnight Tides, the epilogues and the prologues were all just incredible. Just incredible. And I can't tell you how excited I am to get to the Bone Hunters. The Bone Hunters. Now, I still have time. I can do another thing. I might do a top 10 favorite characters sort of thing. I would have to look through them a little bit and maybe kind of, I don't know if I would, do it as I look through all these as I'm talking to you. It might waste too much time, but I think I'll put some thought into it just through the day and see if maybe I come up with my favorite 5 who after this time, I love Talk, but I'm not thinking of Talk right now. I loved Talk at the end of Memories of Ice. But he's just not the one I'm thinking of right now. There are other people, at least 10 people that I am thinking about more, that I am more fascinated by, now that we're at this midway point, and really not even the midway point, because the last books apparently are huge. So anyway, I will talk to you later. Thank you guys for showing up all this time. It's been really fun. And I can't wait to finish this series and kind of join you on other people having their first time through. Really, really liking it. And the community is great, and you guys have been great. So I'll talk to you soon.